Most people think aquariums come alive during the day. They're wrong. The daytime belongs to the visitors. The nighttime belongs to everything else. I found that out 3 weeks after I started working the overnight maintenance shift at Harbor Point Aquarium. The pay was surprisingly good, better than any warehouse job I'd had before. The schedule was simple. Clock in at 11 p.m., inspect the exhibits, clean viewing glass, run water quality tests, report equipment failures, clock out at 7 a.m. The building remained open only to a skeleton crew overnight. Usually 6 people, a security guard, 2 marine biologists, an engineer, another maintenance worker, and me. The aquarium held thousands of animals: sharks, jellyfish, sea turtles, octopuses, even a massive Pacific octopus named Atlas, who seemed smarter than some people I knew. Every exhibit had detailed procedures, feeding schedules, emergency protocols, water chemistry requirements. Everything was documented, everything except Tank 32. During orientation, my supervisor handed me a ring of keys and a laminated floor map. As she pointed to different sections, everything sounded routine. Tropical reef, freshwater gallery, penguin habitat. Then she tapped a hallway near the back of the building. Deep ocean wing. Her expression changed. "You'll never enter Tank 32. I laughed. "I wasn't planning on swimming." She didn't smile. "I mean it." I looked down at the map. There wasn't even a label, just a gray rectangle marked 32. "What lives in there?" She slipped the map into my hand. "You don't need to know." I waited for an explanation. None came. Instead, she continued walking, as though the conversation had ended. Later that night, another maintenance worker named Luis found me cleaning fingerprints off one of the viewing windows. "She told you about 32? "Kind of." He glanced down the hallway to make sure nobody else was nearby. "Whatever you do," he lowered his voice, "don't look into it after 3. I smiled. 3 in the morning? He nodded. "Why?" Luis looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I looked once." "What happened?" He stared at the floor for several seconds. "I don't remember." That answer caught me off guard. "You don't remember?" "I remember looking." Another pause. "I remember waking up in the employee break room." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I lost almost 4 hours." "You passed out?" "So they told me." His voice sounded uncertain. "But I never found out why." Before I could ask another question, someone called his name over the radio. He hurried away, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. Around 2:40 a.m., I finished cleaning the shark tunnel. The aquarium had become eerily quiet. The pumps hummed softly behind the walls. Occasionally, I heard water rushing through filtration systems. Otherwise, nothing. As I walked back toward the maintenance office, I passed the deep ocean wing. Most of the lights had already dimmed for the night. Only faint blue emergency lighting illuminated the hallway. Tank numbers stretched along the wall. 28, 29, 30, 31, then 32. The viewing glass stood nearly 20 feet tall. The exhibit beyond it was completely dark. Not murky, not dimly lit. Dark, as though the tank absorbed every bit of light that entered it. A thick chain stretched across the entrance. Attached to it was a small metal sign. "Do not approach the glass after 3 a.m. No explanation, no warning symbol, just those words. I checked my watch. 2:58. For reasons I still can't explain. I stopped walking and waited. At exactly 3 a.m., the lights changed. Not all of them, just the ones inside the deep ocean wing. The overhead lights dimmed another level, leaving only the soft blue glow from the tanks. The hallway suddenly felt much colder. I glanced around. Nobody else was there. The pumps continued their steady hum. Water flowed through miles of hidden pipes behind the walls. Everything sounded normal. Everything except Tank 32. It made no sound at all. Every other exhibit vibrated faintly with filtration pumps and circulating water. Tank 32 was completely silent. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped over the chain. One step, then another. The viewing glass stretched from floor to ceiling, nearly 3 feet thick. I pressed my flashlight against it. The beam disappeared into the darkness. It didn't reflect. It didn't illuminate anything. The light simply vanished, as though the water swallowed it whole. A shiver ran down my spine. I checked the information plaque mounted beside the exhibit. Unlike every other tank, it contained almost nothing. No species name, no habitat, no feeding information. Only 3 lines. Tank 32 depth. Classified, do not tap on the glass. I laughed under my breath. Classified? It had to be some kind of joke. Then something tapped back. 3 slow knocks from inside the tank. My blood froze. Tap, tap, tap. I stumbled backward. The flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered across the floor. The knocking stopped. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Finally, I forced myself to retrieve the flashlight. I pointed it back toward the glass. Nothing, only darkness. No fish, no movement, no explanation. My radio suddenly crackled. Maintenance 2. It was my supervisor. You finished in deep ocean? I looked at Tank 32. Almost. Leave. The word came faster than I expected. Now. Before I could answer, the transmission ended. The rest of the shift passed without incident, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. At 6:45 a.m., the day staff began arriving. Families would be entering in another hour. Everything felt normal again. As I passed through the deep ocean wing one last time, I looked toward Tank 32. My feet stopped. The darkness was gone. Sunlight filtering through skylights illuminated the massive exhibit. The tank was full, not with darkness, with water, crystal clear water, and something enormous. It drifted slowly through the center of the exhibit, larger than any whale I'd ever seen. Its body disappeared into the blue water above. I couldn't even estimate its full size. Only part of it was visible, gray skin covered in scars, a single fin larger than a pickup truck. Visitors would assume it was a whale. It wasn't. There was no tail, no visible eyes, no recognizable shape, just something, floating silently. I watched in disbelief. A young marine biologist noticed me staring. Beautiful, isn't it? What is it? She smiled politely. Your maintenance. Yeah. You don't need to know. Those were the exact words my supervisor had used. I pointed toward the tank. Was that thing in there last night? Her smile faded. Of course. It wasn't. She looked genuinely confused. It's never left. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped, because I wasn't sure anymore. Had the tank really been empty? Or had I simply been unable to see what was inside? That thought stayed with me all day, until I returned for my next shift. As I clocked in, Luis hurried toward me. His face had gone pale. You looked, didn't you? I hesitated. Yeah. He closed his eyes, then quietly asked the question I wasn't prepared to hear. When did it notice you?
I frowned. What do you mean? When did it notice me? Luis didn't answer right away. He glanced over both shoulders to make sure we were alone. Then he leaned closer. Did it knock? The question hit me like a punch. I hadn't told anyone about the tapping. How did you know? His face fell. Because that's how it starts. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What starts? Instead of answering, he rolled up the sleeve of his uniform. There were 4 pale scars running across his forearm, perfectly parallel. They appeared the morning after I looked into Tank 32. They look old. They weren't. He pulled his sleeve back down. I don't remember getting them. I stared at him. You honestly don't remember what happened? Luis shook his head. I remember hearing the knocks. Another pause. I remember looking into the glass. And then? Nothing. He swallowed. My next memory is waking up in the break room. I wanted to ask more questions, but my supervisor's voice echoed across the maintenance bay. Luis. He immediately stepped away. Before leaving, he quietly said, "If you hear it knocking again." He looked directly into my eyes. Don't answer. The night passed slowly. Every task seemed to bring me closer to 3 in the morning. Changing filters, inspecting pumps, testing salinity, cleaning viewing windows. I checked my watch constantly. 2:41, 2:48, 2:56. Without realizing it, I'd wandered back toward the deep ocean wing. The hallway was empty. Only the soft blue glow of the exhibits reflected off the polished floor. Tank 32 waited at the end of the corridor, silent, motionless, at exactly 3 a.m. The lights dimmed. Again, the temperature dropped instantly. A wave of cold air rolled through the hallway. Then, tap. The sound came from inside the glass, slow, heavy, like someone knocking on an impossibly thick door. Tap. Tap. I backed away. Luis's warning echoed in my mind. Don't answer. Another knock, this one louder. The sound vibrated through the floor beneath my feet. Then something happened that terrified me far more than the knocking. The water moved, not like waves, not like a current. The entire tank seemed to breathe. The surface slowly rose, then fell, as though something unimaginably large had taken a single breath beneath the water. I couldn't look away. Shapes began moving in the darkness. Long, smooth, massive, far larger than anything that should fit inside the exhibit. One shape drifted past the glass, then another. Each one disappeared before I could make out what I was seeing. My flashlight trembled in my hand. Suddenly, every fish tank in the deep ocean wing went dark. 28, 29, 30, 31, all black. Only tank 32 remained visible. Its water glowed with a faint blue light. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me. I turned immediately. The hallway was empty. When I looked back, someone was standing inside tank 32. A man, wearing an aquarium maintenance uniform. He stood beneath the water without moving, without breathing. His uniform looked decades old, faded, covered in algae. One sleeve hung empty. His left arm was missing. His eyes locked onto mine. Then he slowly raised his remaining hand, not waving, pointing, directly behind me. Every instinct screamed not to turn around, but I did. The hallway was empty. When I faced the glass again, the man was gone. In his place, something enormous drifted toward the window. A single eye, the size of a car tire. It opened and looked directly at me, not through me, at me. Then the knocking came again, only this time, it wasn't coming from inside the tank. It came from directly behind my shoulder. 3 slow knocks, on the outside of the glass, as if whatever lived in tank 32 was no longer inside it. I spun around. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no shadows, nothing. My breathing echoed through the deep ocean wing. Slowly, I turned back toward tank 32. The massive eye was gone. The water was dark again. Then my radio crackled. Not with static, with breathing. Someone was on the other end. They weren't speaking, just breathing. "Maintenance 2?" I asked. No answer. The breathing continued, then a whisper. So, a long pause. "You can see it now." The radio went silent. I didn't sleep that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that eye, watching, studying, waiting. When I returned that evening, the atmosphere inside the aquarium had changed. Employees spoke in hushed voices. 2 police officers stood near the staff entrance. An ambulance idled outside. I found Luis loading equipment into the maintenance cart. "What happened?" He hesitated. "The night security guard." My stomach tightened. "What about him?" "They found him in tank 14. I stared at him. "The seal exhibit?" Luis nodded. "He drowned." "That's impossible. Tank 14 was only 8 feet deep. The guard was an experienced diver. He could have stood up. They said he never tried." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Luis looked genuinely disturbed. "The cameras showed him climbing into the tank." "Why?" "No one knows." He swallowed hard. "He just walked in." That night, I asked one of the marine biologists if I could review the security footage. She refused. My supervisor didn't. She unlocked a small office and pulled up the recording. "There," she pointed to the timestamp. 2:59:43 a.m. The guard entered the deep ocean wing. He looked perfectly calm. He stopped outside tank 32. The camera angle couldn't see the glass itself, only the hallway. He stood there for almost 30 seconds, without moving, without reacting. Then, he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a relieved smile. The kind of smile you give someone you've been waiting a very long time to meet. He nodded once, as though someone had asked him a question. Then he turned, walked calmly through 3 exhibits, opened the emergency access gate, climbed into the seal enclosure, and lowered himself into the water. No hesitation, no struggle. He simply disappeared beneath the surface. He never came back up. I looked away from the monitor. "Did they recover the body?" My supervisor didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, "Most of it." I froze. "Most?" She closed the video. "The official report says drowning." "And unofficially?" She looked exhausted. "The medical examiner noted something strange." "What?" "There was seawater in his lungs." I frowned. "He drowned." She shook her head. "No. The seal tank is fresh water." The room became very quiet. Before I could process what she'd said, every light in the office flickered. The building lost power for less than a second. When the monitors came back on, the security footage had changed. Not the timestamp, the image. Instead of showing an empty hallway, the camera now showed someone standing directly in front of it. A man in an old-fashioned maintenance uniform. His clothes were soaked, covered in seaweed. His left sleeve hung empty, exactly like the man I'd seen inside tank 32. He was looking directly into the security camera, smiling. Then, very slowly, he raised one finger, not toward the camera, toward the hallway behind it, toward tank 32. The recording ended. My supervisor quietly shut off the monitor. Without looking at me, she whispered, "He's been on that footage since 1987. I felt my stomach drop. Then why didn't I see him before? She looked at me with genuine fear. Because, her voice cracked, he wasn't looking at you before.
I couldn't stop thinking about one sentence. He wasn't looking at you before. That implied something I didn't want to believe. Whatever lived in Tank 32 had noticed me, and now it was watching. The next night, I almost quit. I sat in my car outside the aquarium for nearly 20 minutes with my resignation letter on the passenger seat. Then I looked at the building. Families had spent the day walking those halls. Children pressed their hands against the glass. Teachers led field trips through the exhibits. None of them had any idea that one hallway was different, that one tank wasn't like the others. If something was really happening inside that building, walking away didn't feel right. I tore up the resignation letter and walked inside. At 11:30 p.m., my supervisor met me in the maintenance room. Without saying a word, she handed me an old brass key. It wasn't labeled. "What opens?" I asked. She hesitated. "The original control room." "I thought it was sealed." "It is." "Then why give me the key?" She looked exhausted. "Because if it has chosen you," she swallowed, "you're going to find it eventually." The original control room was hidden beneath the deep ocean wing. The staircase leading down was narrow and coated with years of dust. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom sat a rusted steel door. The brass key fit perfectly. The room beyond looked untouched since the aquarium opened decades ago. Old control panels, water pressure gauges, handwritten maintenance logs, blueprints yellowed with age. Everything had been abandoned, except one desk. Someone had been using it recently. A single notebook lay open beneath a lamp. The first page read, "If you're reading this, it knows your face." My pulse quickened. The journal belonged to a maintenance supervisor named Elias Turner. The entries began in 1987. At first, they described routine repairs, broken pumps, leaking valves, power outages. Then the writing changed. March 18th. Tank 32 was empty again tonight. Management insists the exhibit is functioning normally. They're lying. March 25th. I watched the cameras. At 2:59 a.m., the tank disappeared. Not the animal, the tank. For exactly 4 seconds, there was only darkness where the glass should have been. April 2nd. The knocking started. 3 knocks every night, always from inside. Never answer. I turned the page. The handwriting became shaky, almost unreadable. April 14th, I finally looked back. It wasn't knocking to get out. It was asking permission to come through. A loud bang echoed somewhere above me.
The notebook slipped from my hands. Another bang. Metal striking glass. Then another. 3 impacts. Slow. Heavy. The knocking had started. I checked my watch. 3:02 a.m. The radio burst to life. Every channel at once. Security, engineering, marine biology, maintenance, all transmitting the same thing. Not voices, water, rushing water, as though every microphone had been dropped into the ocean. Then, someone screamed. The transmission cut off instantly. I sprinted up the staircase. The moment I opened the steel door, alarms erupted throughout the aquarium. Red emergency lights flashed overhead. Sprinkler systems activated. Employees ran through the hallways shouting. I grabbed the nearest security guard. "What happened?" He looked terrified. "We've got a containment breach." My heart stopped. "Which tank?" He didn't answer. He simply pointed toward the deep ocean wing. I ran. Water covered the floor before I even reached the hallway. Not ankle deep, just enough to leave footprints. Cold, salt water. I followed the trail around the corner and froze. Tank 32 was still intact. The glass hadn't cracked, not even a scratch. Yet seawater continued pouring across the floor. Not from the tank, from underneath it. as though an entire ocean existed below the building. Then I looked at the viewing glass. The tank wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't full either. It was open. The darkness inside no longer looked like water. It looked like a tunnel descending farther than light could reach. And standing at its entrance was the one-armed maintenance worker. He smiled, then slowly lifted his hand, not waving, inviting me to come inside. Every instinct told me to run. Instead, I stood there, unable to move. The one-armed maintenance worker remained inside the darkness beyond the glass. He wasn't underwater. He wasn't standing on the bottom of the tank. He was standing in what looked like a tunnel that should not have existed. It stretched downward forever. No walls, no floor, just endless black water disappearing into impossible depths. The man smiled again, then spoke. I couldn't hear him, but somehow, I understood every word. It's waiting. The emergency lights continued flashing. Employees rushed through the halls behind me. None of them slowed down. None of them looked toward Tank 32. It was as if they couldn't see what I was seeing. Then my supervisor grabbed my arm. "Don't look at it." She pulled me backward. The moment my eyes left the glass, the hallway returned to normal. The tunnel vanished. The tank was full of dark water again. Nothing stood inside it. "What did you see?" she asked. I hesitated. A man, her face drained of color. "He invited me in." She closed her eyes. Then we're too late. She led me into a secured records room beneath the aquarium. This room wasn't on any employee map. The shelves were filled with handwritten journals dating back to the aquarium's opening in 1987. Every notebook belonged to a different employee. Maintenance workers, divers, biologists, security guards. Each journal ended the same way, abruptly, as though the writer had simply stopped. One journal caught my attention. Its cover was faded, almost white. The name written across it made my stomach tighten. Elias Turner, the one-armed man. I opened to the final page. The handwriting was barely legible. It isn't an exhibit. It isn't an animal. The tank is only a window. Every night at 3, the window opens a little wider. It doesn't escape. It waits for someone to accept the invitation. Below the final sentence was one last note, written much more recently, only 6 months old. It finally learned how to ask politely. I looked up. "Who wrote this last line?" My supervisor slowly shook her head. "We don't know." "Elias disappeared in 1987. She nodded. "I know." "Then who finished his journal?" Neither of us spoke, because we both knew the answer. Someone who shouldn't have been able to. The building suddenly trembled. Every light flickered. Water sloshed violently inside every exhibit. Fish scattered. The sharks began swimming in frantic circles. Even the sea turtles slammed against the glass, trying to escape. Then every alarm in the aquarium went silent. Instantly, the pumps stopped. The filtration system shut down. The constant background hum I'd grown used to disappeared. For the first time since the aquarium opened, the building was completely silent. Then, 3 knocks echoed through the entire structure. Not loud, not violent, gentle, patient, as though someone stood on the other side of an enormous door, waiting. Knock, knock, knock. The floor beneath my feet vibrated, not from the sound, from something moving, far below us, something unimaginably large. The motion lasted only a few seconds, then stopped. Every monitor in the security office turned on by itself. Every screen displayed Tank 32, not the live camera, the inside of the tank, looking outward, as if a camera had been placed at the bottom, facing the viewing glass. The hallway outside was empty. Then someone walked into view. Me. I watched myself approach the glass. I watched myself raise one hand and press it against the window. I had never done that. The recording timestamp appeared in the corner. Tomorrow, 3:01 a.m. The video continued. My reflection smiled. I didn't. Then, the glass opened. Not shattered. Opened. Like a doorway. My reflection stepped through. The hallway outside remained empty. The camera continued recording. There was no body, no struggle, no splash. Just an open doorway leading into darkness. The timestamp ended. Every monitor went black. My supervisor whispered something so quietly, I almost missed it. They've never shown tomorrow before. I looked at the blank screens, then toward the deep ocean wing. I was supposed to work again tomorrow night, and for the first time since taking the job, I wasn't afraid of what was inside Tank 32. I was afraid that I'd already decided to walk through it.
I didn't go home. I couldn't. Every instinct told me to drive as far away from Harbor Point Aquarium as possible. Instead, I sat in my car until sunrise, replaying the security footage over and over in my mind. The timestamp, tomorrow, 3:01 a.m. It hadn't shown a possibility. It had shown a recording. Something that already existed, somehow. The following night, I returned, not because I wanted answers, because I needed to know if the future could be changed. At 2:30 a.m., I found my supervisor waiting outside the deep ocean wing. She held out a folded envelope. "I've been carrying this for 15 years, she said. "It was given to me by the supervisor before me." I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note. "If you're reading this, leave before 3 o'clock. I looked up. "Did you?" She smiled sadly. "No. Why not?" "Because every person who received that note believed they could stop it." She turned and walked away. I never saw her again. At 2:59 a.m., the lights dimmed. Every exhibit in the aquarium fell silent. The familiar hum of pumps disappeared. The hallway leading to Tank 32 seemed longer than I remembered. Each step echoed. The chain blocking the entrance had already fallen to the floor. No one had touched it. The viewing glass looked different. Not reflective, transparent. Beyond it, there wasn't a tank anymore. There was an ocean, an endless black ocean stretching farther than I could see. No walls, no ceiling, just darkness. The one-armed maintenance worker stood at the shoreline, waiting. When he saw me, he smiled. This time he spoke aloud. "You came." His voice was calm, almost kind. "What are you?" I asked. He shook his head. "I'm not what you should be asking about." He stepped aside. Something enormous shifted beneath the water. The ocean itself seemed to rise, then settle, as though something beneath it had rolled over in its sleep. "What is that?" His smile faded. "We've never seen all of it." The water began glowing. Far below the surface, hundreds of tiny lights appeared. Not reflections. Eyes, thousands of them. Opening one by one. Watching. The maintenance worker looked at me. "It isn't trapped in here." He gestured toward the hallway behind me. "It keeps this place trapped." My heart stopped. "What?" He nodded toward the aquarium. "The tank was never built to hold it. It was built," he paused, or to keep the door closed. A deafening groan echoed through the building. The glass vibrated. Hairline cracks spread across its surface. Employees began shouting somewhere behind me. Emergency alarms blared. The one-armed man looked frightened for the first time. "It has never opened this far." The cracks widened. Water began leaking through. Not in streams, in slow droplets. Each drop that hit the floor instantly evaporated, leaving behind white salt crystals. The thing beneath the ocean moved again. Closer. The water bulged upward. For one terrifying second, I saw part of its shape. Not a fish, not a whale, not anything that had ever lived on Earth. It was simply too large. Its body disappeared into darkness in every direction. My mind couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. The longer I looked, the less it resembled anything at all. I staggered backward. Blood began running from my nose. The maintenance worker shouted, "Don't look directly at it." I covered my eyes. The pressure inside my head eased immediately. Then, everything stopped. The alarms, the shaking, the cracks, silence. I slowly opened my eyes. The tank was normal again. Glass intact. Dark water. No tunnel. No ocean. No maintenance worker. Just my reflection. I laughed. A shaky, relieved laugh. Then my reflection kept laughing. I wasn't. My smile disappeared. His didn't. He slowly raised one hand and waved. I stumbled backward. The reflection did not. It remained standing at the glass, still smiling. Then it turned around and walked deeper into the darkness inside Tank 32, leaving the reflection of the hallway completely empty. I quit that morning. The aquarium closed 6 months later. Officially, structural problems forced the shutdown. The building still stands, completely abandoned. Developers have tried buying it. Every deal falls through. Construction crews refuse to work there. Nobody ever says why. Last month, curiosity got the better of me. I searched satellite images online. The aquarium parking lot was empty. The building looked abandoned. But something caught my attention. The roof over the deep ocean wing had collapsed years ago. Sunlight should have been pouring directly into Tank 32. Yet the satellite image showed only one thing: a perfectly square patch of darkness, blacker than every shadow around it, as if light itself refused to enter. I zoomed in. At first I thought it was a flaw in the image. Then I realized it wasn't. Standing in the center of that impossible darkness was a tiny figure, looking straight up at the satellite, waving, with its left sleeve hanging empty. And sometimes when I wake up around 3 in the morning, I can still hear it. 3 slow knocks, not on my door, not on my window, but from somewhere impossibly deep beneath the floor, waiting patiently, as if the door never really closed. And one day, someone else will decide to look.